So a few years later, there was rumors surrounding this wealthy, eccentric man named Jewel Vignier. He comes from a very wealthy family in New Orleans. He secretly lived in the house in the late 1800s, so after the teacher was there, after the school shut down, and until he died in 1892. So he was living there and no one knew it. He was found dead on a tattered cot.
Squatting?
Yeah.
A squatter?
Man was a squatter, yeah. He was found dead on a tattered cot living in filth. He had hid away in the rooms surrounding him all these different antiques and treasures that he collected. And next to him was a bag of several $100s. And then the more they searched, they end up finding thousands of dollars in a mattress in the house.
Wow.
There was also rumors going around New Orleans at the time that there was lost treasure in there. Like if you got into the house, you're going to be able to get more stuff. He had to.
Yeah.
But people were too scared to go in that house. They're like, no, not going in there. It's haunted. People would say that they could hear the screams of the slaves from the outside. So,
yikes.
Yeah. It was abandoned after his death, obviously. No one knew he was there anyway. In the late 1890s. And then at that point, Italian immigrants were starting to kind of swarm into New Orleans. And it was bought up by a landlord who converted it into cheap housing. He had like 40 rooms in there. But cheap rent wasn't enough to make people want to stay.
Yeah, I bet.
Obviously, because they weren't from there. They didn't know the story. So they moved in because they're looking for cheap rent. But lots of reports happened. One person said that he was attacked by a naked black man in chains. And that the man, once he came at him, abruptly disappeared.
That's terrifying.
Said that, yeah, I know. A naked person's coming at me. Alive or dead.
A naked person chained up? No, thank you. I'll pass, thanks.
Yeah.
The chains are bad enough to add nakedness to it. It's just not good ever.
Others said that they found animals butchered in the house at times, which is, I don't even understand. And children were attacked by a phantom whip.
Yikes.
So, again, Madame LaLaurie. Strange figures wrapped in shrouds would appear before people too, which I don't want that either. Thank you very much. A young mother found a woman dressed in an elegant evening clothes bending over her sleeping infant. Okay, bitch. You know, you want to be floating around in here, you kid. Like, no.
Is it like baby? No. You get some sage and you smudge that shit all over.
Yeah. Right.
Ow, you jerk. I'm sorry. And the cat was on me and he's purring and purring and purring. And they just decided to bite me and walk away like an asshole. Ow.
He's by getting haunted by Madame LaLaurie, and he was like, ah!
Because I was talking.
Oh, you weren't giving him
ruining his zen. I was holding him and petting him, but because I started talking, it was ruining his zen, so he had to leave.
Yeah, he doesn't like that.
No.
Of course, there was reports more of the screams and groans and cries that were heard at night, and they are said to be coming from the locked, abandoned room where the slaves were kept.
Yikes. Bad mojo in that house. Multiple levels. Not just slavery, but tortured slaves is even... You can't, it's like, slavery is bad enough. Then you add torture to it, and that's just like...
I know, another level.
Being a slave itself is torture. I can't imagine adding actual torture to it. Just for torture's sake.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about the treatment of slaves at the end, because I think it's kind of interesting if you start, like, I have questions about this, but I'll talk about it at the end. The mansion, again, was abandoned because they couldn't keep tenants, and people like forget this. And at one point, it became a furniture store, but it didn't go well because the owner said that vandals were breaking. Yeah, it became a furniture store.
Random thing.
Yeah. Owners were mad because they said vandals were breaking in and ruining several of their, like, furniture, obviously. I couldn't think of the word. It was covered in dark, stinky liquid.
Ew.
So he's like, I'm not letting this happen anymore. So he waited out front with a gun all night long, waiting for someone to show up. And no one did. In the morning, when it was dawn, he went inside again. Things were ruined and knocked over, and that liquid was in there again, but no one had been in there.
What
So
kind of
then
liquid?
he was like,
Dark and stinky? What kind of
I
stinky?
don't
Is it like
know.
poopy liquid or like decay?
I don't
That's
know.
awful. Ew.
So he was like, I'm out. Staying here anymore.
Bye.
Yeah.
Like you
In
to say nope.
In 1923, it was renovated by William Warrington. It became Warrington's house. It was a refuge for poor and homeless men. 9 years it was opened, with different men coming in and out that had been released from jail and prison. They did fine there, probably because they're all probably weren't the best of people. Maybe, I don't know.
They're all men.
And, yeah, they were all men too.
Right.
In 1932, it was sold to the Grand Consistory of Louisiana, which is basically, I guess, like a Freemasons. And they kept it until 1942. There weren't a lot of things written down during that time when they were in there, but again, it was like people coming and going and coming and going. It wasn't like a solid, steady person living there. In 1961, it was converted to 20 apartments, and then a retired New Orleans doctor decided to buy it and restore it to its original state, like removed all the apartments, restored the front end into a living area, and then had 5 luxury apartments added to the rear of the house.
Luxury
In
is not.
1970,
You can have it luxury, but if it's haunted, it's still gonna suck.
yes. In 1979, a tenant, Mary Richards, she must have been living in one of the 5 luxury apartments, claimed to witness a number of strange events in her apartment. Water faucets would turn on their own, then off again. Doors would open and close. Another tenant spoke of the familiar bizarre noises that were heard, the screaming, the hollering. And then he specifically said he could hear a young girl's screams from the courtyard. So that kind of ties into little Leah that fell or pushed or whipped. I don't know. Many people who stand near the house will report that they feel like they're taken over by negative energy. So it's like just gives you a bad feeling being near that house. And even like if you don't believe in ghosts or whatever, the energy of the bad crap that happened there is gonna be there.
Right.
You can't just the house burnt, it doesn't matter. That energy is still there.
Right.
And this is interesting. Nicolas Cage purchased the house in 2007.
What?
But,
weirdo.
Yeah. But he lost it 2 years later due to bankruptcy. And then his career started going real bad after that. So some in New Orleans say it's that LaLaurie house curse that got him. Or, he just was really bad with his money, and that could be it too. No single one person has lived in that house for more than 5 years. Those 2 places owned it for 10, but there wasn't one person solidly staying there for more than 5 years. It's like they can't do it until the most recent owner. Actually, he and I'll talk about that in a minute. During it's a very popular spot during ghost tours, the walking tours they have. Obviously it's one of the most famous haunted buildings, and the awful things happened in it. One of the ghost tours, I was on their website kind of looking around at it, and they talked about a psychic medium who was on the tour, and the guide said that the second they walked up to the LaLaurie house, she like gasped and just like stepped back and went, "This is so sad." Like she was overwhelmed by sadness. She experienced heavy emotion, like a weight setting on her, as she described it. She could sense a spirit of a young boy who kind of liked to play pranks on people. And she felt a presence of a little girl who was very nervous. So,
the hairbrusher.
Yeah. For decades, people, there's been rumors about hauntings of the victims of the LaLaurie, and, tenants saying that things move on their own, furniture moves, doors open, closed, even body imprints on the bed, and no one's there. Apparitions of slaves have been seen outside walking around the grounds of the mansion. So even not within the walls, but outside, you can see people walking around like ghosts. No one has actually seen Madame LaLaurie. Isn't found in the building per se, but people have said they've seen her at the St. Louis Cemetery where they think her body is. Yeah. So her ghost is still in the area, unfortunately. Today it's privately owned. The entrance bears a Baroque facade with iron grillwork on the balconies. Inside the vestibule, the floor is black and white marble. There's a curved mahogany railed staircase that runs the full 3 stories. Can you imagine? It must be gorgeous in there.
I bet.
And that old, like, southern, like, New Orleans kind of, I don't know. It's just so cool there. The second floor has 3 large drawing rooms that are connected by sliding doors. The walls have plastered rosettes, carved wooden pieces, and black marble mantles and fluted pillars. Even though you can't tour the inside, you're not allowed indoors because it's a privately owned place now. Obviously, it's the hot spot of the French Quarter. People want to see it. People want to take pictures of it. People want to go there. It's all part. And like I said, I saw it when I was in the French Quarter. I'm like, ooh, that house is so cool looking. And I didn't know I was looking at the LaLaurie house. So, some of the cool things that happened around, the house, it's been part of fiction, obviously. Madame LaLaurie character, a fictionalized version of her character, is in American Horror Story Coven, played by Kathy Bates, who is amazing.
I don't know how much fiction was actually part of that. It looked like, from what I remember of it, it seemed pretty accurate.
It was pretty close, right? It was
Yeah.
pretty close. Filming of the Coven actually didn't happen in the house or near that. The owner was like, no, I don't want you filming here. They actually filmed at the Herman Grimm House Museum on St. Louis Street in the French Quarter. The exterior of the house was filmed actually 2 houses down from the LaLaurie Mansion, and they would lay dirt on the streets to mimic the streets of the 19th century. So that's kind of cool. No paranormal groups have ever been allowed inside. So none of those ghost hunter shows have been in there because
that's kind of sad.
Well, it's been owned like it was apartments, it was residential places, so it wasn't like they could just go walking in, you know what I mean?
Right.
And now, like, with the extreme of what's going on, like, the guy who owns it now, his name is Michael Water, I think is what his name was. He's like an oil tycoon from Texas. Kind of explains why he won't let people in it. Yeah. He actually purchased the house in 2010 and moved in 2013. So, like, when the height of all the paranormal things are going on, he owned it, and he was like, he wasn't letting anyone in there. He actually paid $2.1 million, but can you imagine how much it would be worth now? Because I feel like it'd be worth way more after, I don't know, after Coven was filmed there and everything else. In 2020, apparently there's a film called The LaLaurie Mansion, and they let them in for this, and there's a firsthand view of the property. I didn't really look up to see what that it's supposed to be, like a documentary on the property or something, which I'm going to look that up and watch it. I didn't find that until like later today that was actually something that happened. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So here's my question. So they don't think that, like, there's no proof. They think that the ripping of skin off and all that kind of stuff that was reported maybe was exaggerated stuff, right? But she obviously had not emancipated. She did not emancipate. She had emaciated slaves living there that were treated terribly, that were chained up, that were tortured in ways, maybe not to the extent like having their intestines ripped out of them, but they were tortured. But she really wasn't treating, not that this is not an excuse. She wasn't treating them any differently than other people are treating their slaves. There's reports of slaves being absolutely tortured by every person that owns slaves. Like, there were very few that probably didn't do it.
If they tried to run away, they'd like hack half their foot off with an axe, or they would maim them and rape them, and it's awful.
So one of the things I was reading was talking about, why did all of a sudden there became like a witch hunt for her when it's probably happening? Like, but they say it's because she was caught. Like, she was caught. It was brought out to light like you could see it happen